Crush your weight goals with meals crafted to be nutrient dense and delicious from our sponsor, Cook Unity. Each portion is crafted with local in-season ingredients and high in protein, fiber, and unsaturated fats. Cook Unity makes it easy to find dishes that align with your goals, where you can also enjoy a variety that keeps every meal exciting and satisfying. Everything is sent to your door fresh, not frozen, all at a fraction of the cost and time it can take to meal prep. And I love that all of Cook Unity's packaging is compostable or recyclable. Go to cookunity.com/Pakman free or enter code Pakman free before checkout for free premium meals for life. The link is in the description. On today's show, anger is building across the country, and the Trump White House never saw it coming. We are now seeing the first serious calls for a national strike, not a protest, not a march, really a work stoppage. And it's coming from Chicago's Mayor Brandon Johnson. It's a simple idea. If Trump can't be stopped through the courts or through Congress, maybe he could be stopped by the people that actually make the country work. I'm also going to speak with Abigail Spanberger. She is running for governor of Virginia. This is one of the most important elections this off year in November. Meanwhile, Trump is literally demolishing part of the White House. The East Wing, part of it is being torn down to make room for his $250 million Patriot Ballroom, supposedly funded by generous donors. The administration has even told federal employees, don't take pictures, which is what you always do if what you're doing is above board, right? And while the chaos unfolds, red state secessionists are going to hate this next part, because if any region could actually leave and thrive, it's the Northeast. The numbers don't lie. We're going to look at it. Plus Trump's mental decline on full display with another day of incoherent rants. His press secretary is reduced to saying, "Your mom did it," to a reporter, and Trump melts down over a Republican congressman just asking a few too many questions about Jeffrey Epstein. ProPublica has also uncovered the new secret police force of unmarked agents and unaccountable detentions, the full authoritarian checklist, all of it on today's show. If not now, then when? Many of you know I've been asking, are things bad enough now in this country that it's time to really pull out all the stops and employ all of the protest tactics that are known to achieve change? Mass rallies at urban centers is one. We are seeing more of that. 5 million at the first No Kings, 7 million at the second No Kings. But what about another key tactic that I write about in my book, The Echo Machine? National strikes, mass call-outs from work. Well, we are finally seeing the first major call for that from an elected official. It is Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, who during his fiery speech at this weekend's No Kings rally called for a general strike. He did it in a boisterous and excited fashion. Let's listen to what he had to say.
If my ancestors as slaves can lead the greatest general strike in the history of this country, taking it to the ultra-rich and big corporations, we can do the same today. I'm calling on black people, white people, brown people, Asian people, immigrants, gay people from around this country to stand up against tyranny and to send message to the ultra-rich and big corporations. We are going to make them pay their fair share in taxes to fund our schools, to fund jobs, to fund healthcare, to fund transportation. Democracy will live on because of this generation. Are you ready to take it to the courts and to the streets?
Basically are, right? When we're seeing just the...
So listen, some of you wrote to me and said, this is awesome. Some of you wrote to me and said that he sounds unhinged, but I want to focus on the substance, the general strike idea. A general strike is when workers across a lot of industries, not just one, all stop working at the same time to protest or to demand change. It's not one company. It's not like just tech workers. It's not only teachers or only nurses. The idea is everybody strikes together. In a sense, the US has never really had a true general strike. So imagine if transportation workers, school teachers, power company workers, if everybody joined together, the systems that keep the country going would very quickly grind to a halt. It would be impossible to ignore. And the idea is that by being impossible to ignore, it would force the people in power to come to the table to negotiate. Now, what would it be about? Well, it would really be about collective power. The idea here is Trump, through his authoritarianism, has taken control of so many areas of our lives. No one seems to be able to stop him. And so the point would be people showing up and showing that they can shut the country down when the government oversteps. And the goal would be proving you can't run the country without us. You can't just sit in DC doing all of your authoritarian nonsense and have things continue to function and have the systems from which Trump and his cronies make money continue to spit out money for them. Now, as you can probably imagine, it's very difficult to organize something like this. Many workers are not legally protected if they strike for political reasons. That's what I mean is, as opposed to striking for a specific workplace issue, if you strike for political reasons unrelated to your specific job, you can be fired or replaced. Union membership is at historic lows, and many industries are deliberately structured to prevent collective action with, temporary and gig or independent contractor workers. The whole point being, make it difficult for them to organize. And so under Trump, striking workers could face retaliation. They could face police crackdowns. They could even potentially face prosecution under the laws that are framed as anti-riot or critical infrastructure protection. So there is risk to a general strike. They're also difficult to coordinate. I mean, getting millions of people across industries and states to act together requires a huge amount of organization and trust and communication. And it's very difficult, especially when you've got social media disinformation campaigns and highly polarized politics. Workers could lose jobs, income, or health care, get arrested, get blacklisted. There could be violence. There could be counter protesters. In an authoritarian climate, leaders of such a movement as a general strike could be targeted personally. They could be sued, investigated, harassed. So all of that is true, but we do find ourselves asking the question, is this the time? If not now, then when? What would it take for people to realize this must stop? And the question is whether the American people are ready, desiring, and willing to do something like this right now. My honest assessment, my calculation is that the answer is no. There are clearly millions of Americans concerned by what's going on. 7 million came out and protested over the weekend, but still taking it all together, I think the vast majority are in the position of, if I am not immediately at threat right now, I want to stay home. I want to keep working, bringing food home for my family, getting my kids to school, etc. And that's not a position to be laughed at. I respect people who are saying, I need to keep my head down and keep doing what I believe right now is best for my family. The question will become when it starts being bad for everybody's families, not just some. And so I asked the question to you, when do you think is the time for a general strike, if any? Is it now or is it forthcoming? Donald Trump is now demolishing parts of the White House. Remember, money cannot buy class. And if there is any greater reminder that money can't buy class, it's Donald Trump, his family, and the Trump administration. It is harder to think of a motto more suited to Trump than money cannot buy class. Now, this is all happening to build Donald Trump's now infamous ballroom. It costs $250 million. The demolition of the East Wing has begun. Trump said not a long time ago that none of this was going to interfere with any of the current buildings. Remember when Trump said this just a couple of months ago?
It won't interfere with the current building. It'll be near it, but not touching it, and pays total respect to the existing building, which I'm the biggest fan of. It's my favorite. It's my favorite place. I love it.
Well, it seems that that has not come true. I know this may come as a shock to many of you, but Donald Trump lied again. Now, you might be saying, are $250 million in taxpayer money going to this ballroom? Trump says no. Trump says that the project was funded by, quote, many generous patriots. In other words, it's funded by bribes. They know this looks bad. How do we know that? Because the White House has issued a demand that the construction not be photographed or published. They said, quote, as construction proceeds on the White House grounds, employees should refrain from taking and sharing photographs of the grounds to include the East Wing without prior approval from the Office of Public Affairs. That's what they sent. That was sent by Treasury officials and reviewed by the Wall Street Journal. So the official reason is these pictures that we are looking at, for example, like this picture right here of the White House being demolished, that could potentially reveal sensitive items like security features or confidential structural details. Now, the more realistic explanation seems to be they don't want images of the White House being destroyed under Donald Trump. Normally, a project like this would have a historic preservation review. It would involve multiple agencies. What's the right way to do it? Does it even make sense? Engineering would be involved. None of that happened. The process did not happen. They bypassed the standard review, in large part because some of those key oversight positions aren't even filled by the Trump administration. They're just open positions. I hate to go in this direction, okay? But I've received emails from many of you saying, David, if Trump was planning to move out in January of 2029, he wouldn't be doing this. You know, if you're about to move out of your apartment, you don't repaint the whole thing and get brand new appliances. If Trump were planning to leave the White House in January of 2029, according to many of you, he would not be doing this. And you know what? Maybe there is something to that. But you also have to remember, Trump is an egomaniacal narcissist, increasingly obsessed with his legacy. For Trump, part of legacy is leaving a lasting imprint that is difficult to undo. If you cut funding for Obamacare subsidies, the next president can relatively easily reverse that. Demolishing parts of the White House and spending $250 million to build new structures, much harder to undo. And I believe that this really goes primarily to Donald Trump's ego. And then it gets to, even if Donald Trump does plan to leave the White House in January of 2029, which I believe he does and will, he could still be incentivized to do this with the idea that maybe he is going to make J.D. Vance the heir apparent to MAGAism. And so it'll be there for J.D. Vance. Or maybe it's going to be President Donald Trump Jr., if you can imagine such a vomitous idea. And so maybe it's being done. Nice little ballroom I built for Donald Trump Jr., right? So my question to you, do you believe that the underlying reason Trump is doing this is because he doesn't plan to leave? Do you believe that the underlying reason is because Trump is trying to do legacy stuff that would be harder to reverse than policy, or something else? Let me know in the comment. Send me an email, info@davidpakman.com. I used to spend way too much of my day thinking about planning meals, what to make, how long it'll actually take to make it, whether it'll be something I like. Since I started using Cook Unity, I have cut the stress out. Our sponsor, Cook Unity, delivers restaurant quality meals to my door. It just saves me time and energy, and I can spend time doing other things, no cooking or cleanup required. One of my favorites so far has been Chef Vanessa's Haitian vegetable stew. Great flavors, squash and Japanese eggplant, cabbage, spinach, all simmered with Haitian épi, which is an incredible herb and garlic paste that's served over jasmine rice with black beans and coconut milk with a side of sweet fried plantains. One of the best Haitian meals I've had. And I love knowing that I'm supporting talented chefs making great food. Cook Unity's rotating menu Means I'm always finding new favorites, and it keeps things exciting. Since everything is made by real chefs with local seasonal ingredients, I know I'm getting high quality food that tastes incredible while being super convenient. Reset your routine with fresh, chef-prepared meals. Go to cookunity.com/PakmanFree or enter code PakmanFree before checkout for free premium meals for life. The link is in the description. Sometimes the best snacks are the ones that have been around for a long time. You don't have to reinvent the wheel to get a great snack, and that is what our sponsor Massie is aiming for with their delicious tortilla chips that are made the traditional way. You know I love this stuff, okay? Massie makes their chips with 3 ingredients: organic nixtamalized corn, Redmond real sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. The chip is sturdy. I don't want a weak chip that crumbles when I try to dip into the guacamole. I need a sturdy chip, and that is exactly what Massie's tortilla chips do. They also are using non-industrial oils, which pushes the industry away from some of this unsustainable monocropping. If you are ready to try the most delicious tortilla chips you've ever had, which are sustainably produced, go to massachips.com/Pakman and use the code Pakman for 25% off your first order. The link is in the description. I want to say a huge thank you to our newest members who are supporting alternatives to corporate media like The David Pakman Show. That's Randall Blanchard and Deb Foster. Also Rex Bowler. So all signing up at joinpakman.com. Really appreciate your support. Consider getting yourself a membership. You'll get the daily bonus show, an extra show just for our members, and lots of other goodies. Read about it at joinpakman.com. And also make sure you're getting my free daily newsletter on Substack at substack.davidpakman.com. You know how the right talks about the red states seceding from the United States every once in a while? Sometimes they call it a national divorce. Sometimes Marjorie Taylor Greene waxes poetic about it. And every single time we have to come in and explain to them, sorry, not going to work. The red states are on welfare. The red states aren't self-sufficient. The red states, again, this is of course on average, the red states have lower standard of living, poor education, etc. Well, I have news for them, and they're not going to like this at all. There is a secession that is possible, and it will be a real trigger to many of our MAGA friends. If New England and New York wanted to together secede and create our own country, not only would it work, it would be one of the most successful countries in the world. And I know we're told progressive policies don't work. Being like Denmark and Sweden doesn't work, but it does work. Let me give you the data. The total population of New England plus New York is about 35 million people. The total GDP of the New England states plus New York is 3.75 trillion. This is a GDP per capita of over 106,000 US dollars. Now, if you look at global data, that would make this hypothetical country, New England plus New York, the 4th or 5th richest country in the world per capita. Now, you might say, well, hold on a sec. Whoa, David, hold on a second. Per capita isn't everything. States often need things from other states, from other parts of the country. Well, one thing that this hypothetical country would not need is money from other states, because New England and New York pay in way more to the federal government to subsidize red states than these states ever get back. New England and New York are subsidizers. Now, by the way, if you like analyses like this, if you like content like this, please make sure to like the video and leave a comment saying, David, please more of this, and hit that subscribe button, and I will do more of them. So then we might get to, well, what about education? The states of New England and New York are some of the most densely populated with colleges and universities in the country. No issue with education at all. Well, what about manufacturing and the industrial base? Well, New England and New York have defense, they have aerospace, they have biotech, they have nanotech, they have precision tools. Now, it is true that this hypothetical country would have an issue with automobiles and heavy industry. You'd have to import. But that's okay. There are many countries that import those things. But it would be a finance, tech, and services superpower. They've got ports, JFK, Boston, Logan, Bradley airports, a rail corridor from Boston to New York City. So it would be sort of like Japan, South Korea, or the UK in terms of being resource poor in some areas, able to import raw materials, but exporting massive amounts of capital, research, and technology. Now, the truth is that this should really not come as a surprise. If you look around the world, you find the countries with the highest standard of living. Now, what metric am I using for this? I'm using something called HDI+. You might have heard of just HDI, the Human Development Index. HDI+ takes into account a number of other mechanisms related to life expectancy, quality of life, income, safety, etc. If you look around the world, the countries with the highest standard of living per HDI+ are Iceland, Norway, Switzerland, Denmark, Germany, Sweden, Australia. If you look at what U.S. states are able to match the standard of living of those countries, it's mostly the ones we're talking about. It's Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Connecticut is up there, Vermont is up there, New York is in the top 15 alongside Rhode Island. Maine is sort of right in the middle. So it makes sense that the states with the highest standard of living, if they came together, would be able to be similar to the countries with the highest standard of living. And so it would be a successful, prosperous country because it is organized like a lot of the most successful countries around the world. Now, MAGA really doesn't like this. MAGA wants you to believe that states should be like Mississippi and Arkansas, and don't forget Texas and Florida. They want you to think that no gun safety laws and low regulation of all kinds, lots of uninsured people, lower quality education, lack of access to healthcare. They want you to believe that under the guise of freedom, that is going to get you the most success economically, the most success socially. But if any region of the United States could actually succeed and thrive, it's the Northeast. It's New England plus New York. And by the way, separately, California. This story is not about California. There is a California case to be made as well. California would be completely self-sufficient as a country. And in fact, it would be one of the larger countries in the world, fascinatingly enough. We know about California. The New England-New York alliance would be an unstoppable economic and innovation powerhouse, and the MAGAs absolutely hate it. Donald Trump had another confused, short-circuiting day. He forgot basic things. He told a number of lies. He appeared disoriented and feeble. And he's also saying a lot of things that just don't make any economic sense. One of the things that's important to remember is that China's standing in the world is growing thanks to Donald Trump's tariffs, because Donald Trump's blanket tariffs have driven China to make deals with other countries, meaning other countries are now saying, oh, China is more important to us. And it has also, by going to other countries, made other countries realize, hey, we don't really need to be as aligned with the United States to survive economically as long as we have deals with China. Trump has helped China and hurt the United States with his blanket tariffs. But what is Trump saying? As usual, it's the opposite of what is true. Donald Trump is saying China may not even make it as a country. Listen to this.
Almost like saying, we don't want to do business with you, but it's probably nicer. Saying you're going to pay 158, 157% tariff is a nicer way of saying that we don't want to do business with you. And if they don't do business with us, I think China's in big trouble. I'll be honest with you. I think China is, I don't know that they even make it. I really do. I believe.
I don't know that China's going to make it. You folks, she is eating Trump's lunch. Eating Trump's lunch. China has diversified. China has become more robust and less dependent on any one point of failure. And Trump goes, oh, as a country, China might not be able to do it. The topic of soybeans came up. Now, as I've told you before, China has stopped purchasing soybeans from the United States. This is wrecking American farmers. China's okay. China has made deals to get their soybeans from other countries. China likes it, and those other countries like it. And yet, Donald Trump says, oh, we've got a problem here. Well, the problem is one that you created, sir.
Korea, China, and I will have a really fair and really great trade deal together. I want them to buy soybeans. They stopped buying our soybeans because they thought that was punishment. And it is punishment to our farmers, but we're not going to allow that to happen because I made a great trade deal with China, a $50 billion trade deal. And they were great about it. They were doing everything that they were supposed to do. And then when Biden came in, you know, I used to call President Xi all the time to say, thank you, or you're not buying enough. In other words, they were supposed to buy. Biden, do you think Biden ever called him? I don't think Biden ever called him. You think Biden?
Trump says we're not going to let it happen because it would be bad for the farmers. It's happening right now. The United States is now selling 0 soybeans to China. The farmers are getting crushed. He did it in the first term. He's doing it again. China has moved on. China has found new supply. Does Trump personally suffer? No, he's a rich guy. Do the farmers suffer? Again, yes, they do. And now Donald Trump is saying, no, China's a real problem because they're not buying soybeans. They're not buying soybeans because of what Donald Trump did. Maybe my favorite moment from this event, a reporter mentions that the ambassador of Australia has criticized Trump. Trump has no idea what the guy looks like and doesn't realize that he's in the room sitting at the table. So Trump goes, is he still working with you? And the reporter goes, it's this guy right here. I love this.
Go ahead.
There's been concern in Australia that it's taken 9 months to get this meeting. Have you had any concerns with this administration, with its stance on Palestine, climate change, or even things the ambassador said about you in the past, the Australian ambassador?
I don't know anything about him. I mean, if he said bad, then maybe he'll like to apologize. I really don't know. Did an ambassador say something bad about him? Don't tell me. I don't. Where is he? Is he still working for you?
Yeah. It's explained to Trump. It's the guy sitting right here that you're meeting with right now.
You said bad?
Before I took this position, Mr. President.
I don't like you either. I don't, and I probably never will. Go ahead. No, you went. Go ahead, behind you, President.
There you go. I don't like you either, and I probably never will. What a day for the President of the United States. Trump also spoke at another event at which he claims to have fixed health care. Now, I know many of you in the audience will be very surprised to hear that. We are still waiting for Donald Trump's health care plan, due 2 weeks from August of 2020.
Biggest deductions ever taken, job producing deductions, $50 billion to rural hospitals. We took care of Medicaid, Medicare, we took care of everything. And we did something that people didn't know. We didn't know where we'd stand in a year or 2 years from now. So we put every single thing that we wanted in that bill for 4 years. So we don't need any more votes. All we want to do is have a vote of continuation. And it's the first time in history that a group has not voted for continuation. So they have what's called a Trump derangement problem. Have you heard about that problem? Because that's the only reason this could be possible. But I think we're doing very well. I think they're going to have no choice but to go along because the country is setting records in every way and people want it to continue that way. So we're hoping the Democrats become much less deranged and that we will get the vote pretty soon. And I hear they're starting to feel that way too. They're starting to feel like they really have to do what's right for the country, and they will. But
Trump has still not released a health care plan, which was just 2 weeks away, we were told, in August of 2020. Trump is arguing he has fixed healthcare when he has done the opposite and has weakened it. Medicaid and Medicare have been destroyed, not completely. They have been hurt by the one big beautiful bill, the one nasty bill, whatever you want to call it. The opposite. Trump's theme is he does one thing and then claims to have done the opposite. If you pay attention to what he did and you like that, hey, cool. If you pay attention only to what he says and you don't look at what he did, then you find something you like, I guess, for people who are falling for it. Trump then cannot even remember what country he appointed Herschel Walker to be the ambassador to. It happens to be the Bahamas. Trump doesn't know what's going on.
We're in the NFL, too, and he's a great person. And now he's going to be the ambassador. Come on, name the country, Herschel. He's going to be in the tough job.
Where is the news coverage of Trump never remembering a damn thing? There is no such coverage because it only matters when it's Joe Biden. A disastrous day for Donald Trump, event after event after event, just humiliating. And meanwhile, outside, they're demolishing the White House for Trump's ballroom. A pathetic and embarrassing day. But then there's Caroline Leavitt. Whenever you think you've hit a new low of embarrassment, we remember she's the press secretary. In behavior really more reminiscent of an adolescent than of a White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt responded to questions from a reporter with the middle school classic, "Your mom did." I am not joking. This is where we are today. Sticks and stones may break my... What are those phrases? That is the level Caroline Leavitt is operating in. Now, I know that she's very young to be a White House press secretary, but she's not 12. After learning that Trump and Putin plan to meet Thursday in Budapest, Hungary, many reporters wondered why, and why indeed. Given that Hungary is currently run by another authoritarian autocrat, Viktor Orban, a meeting between authoritarians Trump and Putin in the country run by another authoritarian, Orban, doesn't exactly sound like it'll lead to a pro-democracy outcome. So the question was, why Budapest? The question was asked by SV Date. Caroline Leavitt responded with, "Your mom picked it." We have the text messages. The text exchange went as follows. Is the president aware of the significance of Budapest? In 1994, Russia promised in Budapest not to invade Ukraine if it gave up the nuclear weapons it inherited when the Soviet Union dissolved. Does he not see why Ukraine might object to that site? Who suggested Budapest? Thanks. To which Caroline Leavitt responded, "Your mom did." Your mom did. SV Date said, "Is this funny to you?" To which Caroline Leavitt responded, "It's funny to me that you actually consider yourself a journal." I assume she means a journalist. "You are a far-left hack who nobody takes seriously, including your colleagues in the media. They just don't tell you that to your face. Stop texting me your disingenuous, biased, and bullshit questions." We essentially have internet trolls, dumb ones, running the country. Next, she's going to say, "I know you are, but what am I?" The immature, childish bullies are now in charge. She really is a joke, and she has now spoken out about the exchange, but her outspeak doesn't make any sense. She said, quote, "For context, SV Date of the Huffington Post is not a journalist interested in the facts. He is a left-wing hack who has consistently attacked President Trump for years and constantly bombards my phone with Democrat talking points. Just look at his feed. It reads like an anti-Trump personal diary. Here is my full response to his, quote, inquiry. Activists who masquerade as real reporters do a disservice to the profession." You know, I want to get a real answer to the question. Why the hell are they meeting in Budapest? There is no reforming these people. They simply have to be removed by defeating them. And I would love at some point to get an answer, because not only is Budapest significant in that it's two authoritarians saying, let's meet in another authoritarian haven. As SV Date points out, it is particularly adversarial to Ukraine. And the idea of Budapest, Hungary, as some kind of neutral site where the differences between Russia and Ukraine could be sorted out logically for the mutual benefit of everybody. It's just all completely pathetic. And that's always the way it is with Donald Trump. Your mom did it. That's where we are today. Many of us know all too well about the sticking, rubbing, and chafing that you can get with traditional underwear. Our sponsor, Sheath Underwear, have created unique boxer briefs with multiple ergonomic compartments in the front, which prevents skin on skin, and that means everything stays separate, comfortable, dry, and cool. You will have a boost of confidence when you're out and about. I've known so many people who were skeptical about those compartments, friends who say, I heard that ad for Sheath, what about those compartments? And then they try it, and then they're amazed at the comfort and breathability when they finally try it. You will thank yourself. Plus, Sheath has brand new materials like bamboo and mesh for even more cooling comfort. They will be the most comfortable pair of boxer briefs you ever put on. No more sweatiness and chafing and readjusting, especially at the gym. It's a lifesaver. Give Sheath Underwear a shot. I've had a great experience. I think you will too. Head over to sheathunderwear.com/Pakman and get 20% off with code Pakman. The link is in the description. A pending Supreme Court case could strip our Fourth Amendment rights and allow immigration agents to come into our homes for any reason, no probable cause needed, all while Republicans try to twist things so that you think this is all great for America. This should be the biggest story in the US right now, but it's almost impossible to keep up with the millions of moves that Trump is making every single day. That's why Ground News exists. Ground News is an app and website that exposes the blind spots and spin before it takes control of our opinions. Ground News is the smarter, more reliable way to stay informed when MAGA is banking on us getting distracted. I'm partnering up with Ground News to give you 40% off the same Vantage plan that I use. So you'll pay only $5 a month for all of their premium features. Just go to ground.news/Pakman or use the code Pakman in the app when you sign up. The link is in the description or scan the QR code. It's great to be joined today by Abigail Spanberger, who is the Democratic nominee for governor of Virginia. This is not a 2026 race. This is a 2025 race and arguably one of the most important ones. Really appreciate you being here. And maybe we could start by talking a little bit about Virginia. I mean, Virginia is very interesting because there's some sense in which Virginia can kind of be seen as a bellwether, as a state that sometimes votes for Republicans and sometimes for Democrats as to the direction that things are going. Is there anything unique to Virginia that would explain its role as such a bellwether?
David, thank you so much for having me on. And I will give a little caveat. I'm running for governor of Virginia. So, of course, I'm going to think that Virginia has tremendous importance on the national stage. So that caveat aside, I do think there are some reasons why people really do look towards Virginia. Namely, we have these off-year elections. Our gubernatorial race, our statewide races are this year, November 2025. We're also a state that is extraordinarily diverse in industry and in people and in landscape. We have, a tremendous number of federal employees, the largest naval base in the world, and our number one private industry is agriculture. So I do think that there is some reason to look to Virginia for indications of where the country is politically. In fact, because of the nature and the timing of our elections, but also importantly, because I do think that we have a little bit of everything in a way that can be representative of maybe trends that other people might see in other portions of the country.
In thinking back to when Glenn Youngkin got elected, I remember covering that race, and there was an interesting kind of dance that he did at the time where he sort of, this is my characterization, wanted to get the benefit of the sort of MAGA movement, but at the same time didn't want to be too closely associated with Donald Trump in some of the ways that might become a drag on his campaign. But if there's anything I can say that is praiseworthy of how he ran the campaign, although I don't respect his political views, it's that he seemed to find a balance between doing the anti-woke stuff and doing some of the things that were en vogue at the time, but not too closely aligning himself with Trump, who was not particularly popular in the state. the Republican voters in the state, some of whom, of course, you hope to attract with your candidacy, are Republicans in Virginia different than the typical MAGA Republican in some ways?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Well, I do think that the 2021 election, which is, of course, when our Republican governor was elected, that was a unique time, and certainly he was able to distance himself a bit from Donald Trump because he was, of course, out of office at the moment. As you mentioned, he really did tiptoe around it, never inviting Trump to visit. And it was like a Rorschach test. People thought he was heavily aligned or they thought he was opposed. And he never really had to convey one way or the other. I think that what we're seeing now on the ground is that there are, of course, many people across Virginia who remain very aligned with President Trump, who continue to like whether it's his policies or his rhetoric or frankly, just his bravado. But what I also know to be true is that there are many people, some who voted for him even just last year, and certainly many who voted for Governor Youngkin, our Republican governor back in 2021, who are asking themselves, rightly and appropriately so, is this what I voted for? Is this what I wanted? And you just look at the basic numbers related to Virginia. We are uniquely and incredibly impacted, of course, by the shutdown, which we are in the throes of at this moment. But since January, from the DOGE effort, more than 320,000 federal employees call Virginia home. And that's just the federal employees. Once you kind of scale it out to government contractors and people's who in some way deal with the federal government in an economic way, the impact is substantial. For restaurant owners who are seeing a diminishing customer base, for small business owners, the same. The tariffs and the retaliatory tariffs are crushing so many of Virginia's farmers. Input costs are rising, whether it's for fertilizer or machinery on their farms. And then we've lost whole markets because of retaliatory tariffs. And so I think that people who would either call themselves Republicans or historically have voted along the way for Republicans, there's quite a willingness to ask themselves the question, is this working? And this chaos coming out of Washington, is this the type of leadership that I want back home in Virginia? And I think that more and more people are saying, no, I want a governor who stands up for Virginians, a governor who's going to sort of name and number all of the assaults on our Commonwealth that we're witnessing from the Trump administration, and the impacts, whether it's on our rural communities and on healthcare or on our academic institutions or on our business sector. We've had 7 months of rising unemployment in Virginia. We lost MSNBC's or CNBC, excuse me, CNBC's had previously named Virginia the #1 place for business. We lost that title, and the hits just keep coming. And I think many people are considering, what does it mean to have leadership in Richmond who's actually going to stand up for Virginia? Because of course our current governor and our lieutenant governor, my opponent, have been absolutely silent in the face of all of the attacks on Virginians and our economy and our healthcare. The list goes on and on.
With regard to what's happening within the Democratic Party in Virginia right now, in some parts of the country, there's really a sort of, I don't even know the right word. It's sort of a combination of exhaustion and disgust with the sort of traditional establishment Democratic candidate way of doing things. And I see it on my show when we've interviewed candidates over the last month who are running for Senate, who are running for positions in the House of Representatives. We also talked to sitting governors. And there's a wing of the Democratic Party that is sort of like, listen, the model has to be someone like a Zohran Mamdani. Now, on a personal level, I'm not a socialist. And so I have many policy disagreements with someone like a Mamdani. But I can't help but recognize that there is an energy and a plain speaking way of people like Mamdani that I think there's a desperation for in the Democratic Party right now, because I'll be honest, 8 out of 10 Democrats I interview, I ask what seems like a simple question and we get answers that are, I can't really call them answers, is I think what I'm trying to say. So yeah. What do you make of what seems to be a shifting landscape for what Democratic voters are looking for in a candidate?
I think this is such an interesting question. And I'll take a step away from my own race right now and say that in Virginia, we have 100 seats in the House of Delegates, and those seats are up every 2 years, and they're up this year. And we have 100 Democrats running in all 100 seats. And this is the first time this has happened in years and years and years. And what we're seeing in terms of the candidates and the people who are stepping forward to run for the House of Delegates, in addition, we also have 3 statewide seats that run individually, and we can flip them individually. We've got a pediatrician who has never been involved in politics. And when he saw attacks on healthcare and the sort of MAHA movement impeding his ability to keep kids safe, he stepped forward and said, I'm going to run for office and try to bring my voice to Richmond. We've got a woman who's an auditor, and her whole focus of the campaign is, I'm a mom, I'm an auditor, I'm a professional person, never been heavily involved in politics, but at a time when we are seeing so much chaos, particularly in the financial space of, the actions of the federal government, how can I ensure that my voice, my perspective, and my ideas are present and serving my community in Richmond? And the list goes on. We've got a 4th-generation cattle farmer running to bring her family's views, the industry, the voice of ag to Virginia, a variety of veterans of all of our military service branches. There's a vibrancy. And I will say people are exhausted. But in Virginia, where we do have elections every single year, there's also a resolute focus on what is possible into the future. And I would add, when I was first elected to Congress, and I first ran in 2018, declared my candidacy in 2017, I ran in a district that hadn't elected a Democrat since 1968. And I ran in a district that my predecessor had won by 15 points. And my district had a little bit of notoriety to it because Eric Cantor, the Republican majority leader, had lost in a primary from the right. And then I ran against the Tea Party insurgent who had beat Eric Cantor and then served a couple terms. And then I beat that guy, swinging the district almost 17 points. And the way that we did it was by just being tactically engaged on the ground. And it's much easier to do that, within a congressional district, one of 11 in Virginia, to be spread across the district, talking to people, engaging, but trying to do that same sort of model where, it isn't necessarily about the candidate. The candidate has to have, the background and the energy and the ideas and clearly articulate what it is that we will do, or what it is, in my case, that I am for, and the policies I plan to pursue. But ensuring that people in every community across, at the time, my district, now in the gubernatorial race, feel pulled into and part of the process, because so much of whether it's apathy or worry or fear or concern or just kind of a feeling of just being fed up, sometimes that's because the politics seems to exist further away from the everyday voter. And so we have the largest field team in Virginia history. We are knocking, hundreds of thousands of doors. We've made over 1 million phone calls. We've got volunteers in every community, making sure that people know they have options and there's candidates running who want to serve them. And importantly, not taking any community, no matter how red or frankly how blue those communities are, making sure that people are invited into the process. So, I don't know if that wholly gets at your question, but I think that what I have seen, at least in Virginia, is people increasingly want a bit of a connection to a hope of something better. They want to know you're going to be competent, you've got plans, and you're going to work hard. But they also want to be, to whatever degrees, not everybody wants to knock doors, but want to be connected to the process and not just feel like yet again politics is sort of put upon them. It's at times it's a hard balance, but I think when you bring people in as candidates who love people and love what they're doing and are driven by a deep sense of empathy, and our Speaker of the House, Don Scott, is a fantastic leader. And I've heard people ask him before, when you're trying to, ensure that you're recruiting candidates who are going to win in some of these House of Delegates seats, what do you look for? And I think sometimes his answer can be surprising, and I've heard him give it multiple times. He says empathy. Like, I want to know that when you walk into a community or you walk into a church or you walk into somebody's business, that you're going to feel and you're going to respond as a human towards the challenges that people are facing. And I think that's why we have so many extraordinary candidates who are running, because frankly, for many of them, it's their personal experiences that drove them to run, and that is driving them every day of what is a really tough election cycle. And it's why I believe we're going to flip quite a few seats in the House of Delegates, as well as our 3 statewides this November, 2 weeks from today, in fact.
One of the things that I know my audience really appreciates is when candidates come on the show and have really specific action plans on certain issues. Yesterday, I was part of a group of about 5 or 6 of us creators who met with Governor Wes Moore. And one of the things he said is a guiding principle right now is that Democrats need to do more now and fast, in the sense of saying, we have specific ideas that we're going to implement. If we just pick one thing in the few minutes we have left with you and think about affordability in Virginia. Yeah. Affordability could be handled in a lot of different ways. Affordability could mean, we're going to suspend zoning barriers so that we can build more housing, which will bring down the cost of housing, for example. Or I'm going to deal with utilities, and the first thing I will do is I will negotiate the utility rates in this way. Speaking as specifically as possible, knowing that there's this desire for people who have really tangible ideas, what is your immediate on affordability in Virginia?
So I'm going to start top level. Affordability is the number one issue. Housing, healthcare, and energy are the places that it comes up the most often. And the challenge there as well is that some of the ways that you solve or get at these challenges, the response can't necessarily be felt immediately. So of those 3, I'm going to pull myself back from my desire to laundry list all of the things that I would like to talk about, and I'll go straight at the issue of housing. So a couple things. Day one is working with the General Assembly. So there's a variety of things that as governor, I can prioritize. Working with Virginia Economic Development Partnership, which works to attract businesses and ensure that Virginia businesses have markets outside of the state. Ensuring that they are putting a priority on the recognition in their communication with locality, in my administration's community with locality, that when we're recruiting businesses, we have to have the infrastructure to meet their needs, and that includes housing. So localities that are being aggressive and focused on expanding out their housing options, those are the localities where we're going to aggressively try to bring business, and not to neglect any other locality, but to recognize and make sure in the conversation, housing is part of it. We have a variety of hurdles, call it red tape, call it, roadblocks that we put in place in Virginia at the state level. Some of them older requirements that might have made sense from a health and safety perspective a decade or 2 ago. But day one, I'm going to put out a call to all of our state agencies, particularly those that deal with housing permitting and related developments. So that's our Department of Transportation and environmental quality, and making sure that they are streamlining as much as possible all requirements and getting rid of any more antiquated, no longer necessary hurdles that we make people jump through. Also, Virginia is a Dillon rule state, so we do put constraints on our localities. And as governor, I will work with the General Assembly to say, let's untie their hands a bit, because it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, particularly when we have very densely populated regions and very rural communities. And so ensuring that localities can take the step that's right for them, not being bound by the state, and in some cases not, pointing to the state as the reason that they're not taking action, that's important. Ensuring that we are building up more workforce and attainable family housing is important. Ensuring that we can turn over, we've got a lot of older buildings or older manufacturing sites, that we can turn those over and incentivize in many ways moving those older buildings or older areas of communities into housing. Because it isn't going to be one thing that fixes the problem. It's going to be a real recognition that all of those things work in complement of one another. Virginia also is one of the worst states when it comes to eviction. And if we want to have people in steady housing and ensure that they can continue to make sure their kids have a steady experience in schools, or they can remain in steady employment, being in steady housing is like a key indicator of someone's trajectory. And Virginia is one of the worst states for eviction. So within that housing plan is ensuring that those who have housing can stay in it. And so working with the General Assembly to elongate that period. Right now, we are quick to evict people in Virginia. And we know the data bear it out easily and readily that if you can extend that period of time where someone might miss a payment, that once they get back on track, they're back on track. But if we evict them, or if their landlord can evict them in that time, you create such a negative cycle that it might take years to get that individual or that family back on track. So a variety of levers that we can pull to really ensure that into the next, as we're looking at 10, 15, 20 years from now, people who want to live in our beautiful Commonwealth have the ability to do it not just somewhere, but in the community that they want to live in. And this is deeply personal for me because back in 2014, my husband and I are both from Virginia. I was a CIA officer. We were living overseas, then we were living on the West Coast with my job. And we made the choice to move back home, a couple miles from where we had both lived as kids. And the reality is he works from home. He's an engineer. If we had been from the community, literally the next county over, we wouldn't have been able to move home because at the time, the broadband infrastructure wasn't what it needed to be for someone who works from home. So we would have moved probably to the county that we happen to grow up in. And there's just story after story of people. It's one thing to move back home to Virginia, but I want people to be able to go the place that they want to be. And whether you might be priced out of the community you grew up in Northern Virginia, or there isn't the infrastructure necessary for you to return home to some of our other counties and localities, all of that, the call for me is to make sure that anywhere you might want to live, there's an option for you as an individual, as a family. But importantly, that's how we continue to grow our economy and ensure that people can create opportunity right where they are, or that they can go to the place where they want to be and succeed.
That is a lot of specific ideas, and I'm glad to hear that. This is an election that is in 2 weeks. We've been speaking with the Democratic candidate for governor of Virginia, Abigail Spanberger. Really important race. We're going to be watching it closely, and I really appreciate your time so close to the election.
Thank you so much. Early voting has begun in Virginia. We're seeing tremendous engagement. And if anybody wants to learn more about our race, volunteer from afar, or make sure your friends in Virginia are aware about the campaign, my website is abigailspanberger.com.
One of my close friends has a cat that I actually really like. I take a lot of heat for not being a cat guy, but this particular cat I really like. But this cat is a very picky cat when it comes to mealtime. I will admit, turns up her nose to a lot of the store-bought stuff. Then my friend tried our sponsor, Smalls, and the problem was gone. They even did a little test, old food in one bowl, Smalls in the other. The cat went right for the Smalls, no hesitation, no delay. The first time that she saw her cat get excited about mealtime in a long time, which this cat is picky, folks. This cat is picky. This is because Smalls is real food for cats. It's protein-packed recipes, real ingredients you would actually recognize from your own fridge. No preservatives, no artificial fillers, nothing mysterious, just fresh premium meals for cats delivered right to your door on whatever schedule makes sense for you. That is why Cats.com has named Smalls the best overall cat food. Forbes happens to agree. Give your cat the food they deserve. For a limited time, get 60% off your first order, plus free shipping when you go to smalls.com/Pakman. The link is in the description. Donald Trump has just declared war on a Republican congressman who will not stop asking questions about Jeffrey Epstein and what he is trying to hide should at this point terrify us. Donald Trump went on an unhinged Truth Social rampage. He called Republican Representative Thomas Massie third-rate, weak, and pathetic, and is demanding that he be thrown out by Kentucky voters. This is not about loyalty. This is not about policy. This is about one thing. It is about Epstein, and Trump is panicking. Let's take a look at the post. This is a wild one, okay? So strap in. Third-rate Congressman Thomas Massie, a weak and pathetic rhino from the great Commonwealth of Kentucky, a place I love and won big 6 times, must be thrown out of office ASAP. The incredible people of Kentucky's 4th Congressional District gave us a mandate to make America great again. And the person that will help us do that is Navy SEAL, Army Ranger, and 5th-generation Kentucky farmer Captain Ed Gallrain, a true America First patriot. He goes on to talk about how great Ed is. And then in the third and final paragraph of this diatribe says, I hope Ed gets into the race against Massie, who is now polling at about 9%, because the great people of Kentucky are wise to him. He only votes against the Republican Party, making life very easy for the radical left, unlike lightweight Massie, a totally ineffective loser who has failed us so badly. Captain Ed Gallrain is a winner who will not let you down. Should he decide to challenge Massie, Captain Ed Gallrain has my complete and total endorsement. Run, Ed, run. MAGA. Here's what really happened. Thomas Massie just did something almost no Republican has had the courage to do. He teamed up with a Democrat. That Democrat is Ro Khanna, and they are teaming up to try to force a vote demanding the Justice Department release all of the documents from the Epstein investigation. Now, we are going to keep pushing as well. And this is an area where, to the extent that there's overlap between Democrats, Republicans, the left and right, we also want to see those files. If you agree with the files being released, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button. Let's get the word out, share the video. Let's keep pushing for it. Now, according to multiple reports, Trump's name is all over those files. It may be that he is all over those files because he was colleagues or acquaintances, better said, with people who are perpetrators in the files. It may be because Trump is a perpetrator in the files himself. We don't know. Until we have that information, we simply don't know. But what we do know is that there's a sitting president trying to destroy a member of his own party because the congressman wants transparency, the very transparency Trump used to say he also wanted. Trump used to say he also wanted the Epstein files released, but it slowly shifted and changed to where Trump was, by the time he got elected, saying, the Epstein files I'm not so sure of. And now it seems clear that he doesn't want those files released. Remember that we know Trump once called Epstein a terrific guy. He said, Epstein likes women on the younger side. Those are Trump's words. And so Trump knew what was going on. And now Trump's administration has concluded Epstein's death was definitely a suicide, which has thrown a lot of the conspiracy theorists for a loop. And also that there is no client list, which is very convenient and difficult to believe. But it gets even worse than that. Trump won't rule out pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's partner, who is serving decades for sex trafficking of children. Maxwell just happened to give an interview exonerating Donald Trump. How convenient. So Massie has had enough, and I agree with him on this issue. He wants answers, he wants documents, and Trump's response is to try to destroy and end his political career. Trump endorsed Ed Gallrain, a failed state Senate candidate, saying, run, Ed, run. It's not even clear that Ed wants to run. Trump is desperate to get rid of Thomas Massie. He's throwing the full weight of the presidency behind removing Massie from Congress. And I have something else to add to this. Marjorie Taylor Greene also wants the Epstein files released. Massie has never been a close ally of Trump's, but Marjorie Taylor Greene has. I would not be shocked if Marjorie Taylor Greene keeps barking up this tree to see Donald Trump turn on her and try to get her kicked out as well. It's funny how he refers to Massie as Epstein obsessed. I'm going to translate that for you. Caring about victims of sexual assault is now Epstein obsessed. That's the translation. So I don't want to overstate the degree to which I like Thomas Massie. I agree with the guy on basically nothing. But there is a level of courage when your party is mostly doing one thing and you know the president is going to use the power of the bully pulpit to attack you. It does take some courage to stand up and say, this is not right. And Trump's answer is very clear. Destroy anybody who asks. Smear anybody who has the audacity to say, hey, maybe we should release those files. So the 2026 Kentucky primary is all of a sudden about a lot more than just politics. It's, are we going to demand accountability from the most powerful people in this country, or are we going to let them bury the truth forever and allow Donald Trump to convince someone to run against Massie, maybe even lead to Massie being removed from Congress by losing the primary? Which are we going to do? I'm on the side of the transparency. Trump used to be on that side as well. Another day, another authoritarian tactic from the 20th century surfaces, in 2025 in Donald Trump's America. There is a ProPublica investigation which has found that Donald Trump's growing, shadowy secret police, this cadre made up of sort of a who's who of federal law enforcement, is checking a lot of the boxes of authoritarian repression and police power with no limits. If you are a progressive, you should hate this. If you are a right-leaning libertarian, you should hate this. If you are a constitutionalist, you should hate this. We're seeing a complete erosion of civil liberties protections. We used to have constraints on law enforcement, and suddenly we barely do. The first element of this is anonymity. This shadowy police force often is made up of troops with no identification markers that show they even are law enforcement. They often wear generic police patches with no names, no badge numbers, no agency insignia. They're often wearing masks. They're in unmarked vehicles, doing a lot of operations with cars that have out-of-state plates, no plates at all. And if you don't have identifiable officers, you can't really make a misconduct complaint. A guy with no badge and no designation as to what department he's even representing showed up in a vehicle with no license plates and harassed me. Who am I complaining about? I don't even know. It is, they were in an unmarked vehicle with no badge and a mask. I have no clue who it was. This leads us to the due process violations. Remember, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Rumazia Ozturk. She was held without contact for 24 hours after writing a campus op-ed. You don't have to agree or disagree with the substance of what she wrote to know that that is not an American thing to do. Detainees are then being moved and shuffled between states, separating them from family, sometimes separating them from legal counsel. Officers have been circumventing judicial oversight, sometimes by waiting outside of court proceedings to snatch people. And we're also seeing mass detentions without evidence. 47 people, including 9 children, seized at a birthday party with no public evidence supporting any gang affiliation claims that have been made. The third element is the massive increase in the size of these agencies. One of the other hallmarks of authoritarian regimes is they blow up, they increase the size of the enforcement agencies. $50,000 signing bonuses are reportedly being offered. Dropped age, training, and educational requirements to grow this shadowy police force. And 11,000 new hires are planned with what they are calling streamlined training. Now look at the analogies to prior authoritarians. Secret police tactics, masked agents, unmarked vehicles, detention with no communication, the targeting of dissenters, intimidation of officials, disappearances. These are techniques and tactics with a very ugly past. It's very easy to go, oh, Hitler, yeah. But we're talking about Mussolini. We're talking about Franco. We're talking about Pinochet. I mean, I could give you 10 or 12 different examples. Once a government establishes that we've got a class of people that we allow to be seized by masked agents without accountability, who's next should be the question we are asking. The infrastructure, you know how I was recently listening to a podcast about colonoscopy of all things. And in the United States, we do way more colonoscopies than just about any other country. And one of the things that the podcast pointed out is once you build the infrastructure to do a lot of colonoscopies, you're going to do it. And if we apply that here, once you build the infrastructure of oppression, which is the deputizing of these troops to do local law enforcement, increasing the size of the forces, militarizing them, looking the other way about due process. Once you build that infrastructure of oppression, you're going to use it. And what sometimes happens is that what starts with them, whoever they are, ultimately expands to us. It would almost certainly expand to me based on a number of different identifying characteristics. So this is terrifying, and it is happening more quietly than is required to really get the attention of the country. I'm doing everything I can to tell you that this is going on. Now, on the bonus show today, there is a concerning economic metric, which is Americans becoming increasingly behind on car payments. This is something that can signal a forthcoming economic calamity. We will also talk about the Supreme Court weighing gun restrictions for drug users. And we will also talk about some shakeups in the Massachusetts House and Senate. Congressman Seth Moulton challenging Senator Ed Markey. Our friend Dan Coe running for the seat being vacated by Seth Moulton. So a lot of interesting things going on. All of that and more on today's bonus show. Get instant access by signing up at joinpakman.com. Get my free newsletter, substack.davidpakman.com. I'll see you on the bonus show. I'll be back tomorrow.